seen things people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Brian at Whisper Status 74. Welcome to the community. Welcome to the channel. If it's the first time you are seeing me, please consider liking and subscribing. We are real tech for real people. Today's video will be one of my favorite topics. It is a throwback video to one of the panels I've always dreamed of, which was a Sharp Aquos. It's about 10 years old. It's 70-inch 1080p LED tri-luminous technology. Many of you remember that display. Before we start, special shout out to my uncle Roberto. This is his panel. We'll go into the story about when he purchased it, why he purchased it. Also, special shout out to a good friend and community member, John Hooper of Vienna. He is our resident plasma guy. He loves all old things tech. So do I, as I have my unopened HD DVD player here that we'll do an unboxing for. I've had it for a while, actually. But I do want to talk about this as I love going back to old technology. And in the comments, my question for you is, what was your dream display? When you first got into home theater, what was that unobtainable panel? You can tell me one that you have now, but if you've been into home theater for a while, please tell me when you got into it, what was the panel that you marveled over back in the day at Sears or those stores back then? Tweeter, all those stores where you saw that untouchable large. Was it a Mitsubishi? Was it a Toshiba? Was it a Philips? Sony, Hitachi, which names were back then? Sharp was a huge name about 10 years ago. And I remember getting one of my best displays around that time. It was a Samsung Touch of Red LED. It's been on the channel before. It was the largest display I had at that time, which was 52 inches. I was so happy. And as I had gotten that display, my uncle Roberto had actually been researching panels, and I had told him about a few panels at the time. He took my advice and he went and got himself something. I had no idea he was getting a 70-inch. He did not tell me that until I went over to his place. And, years later, I'm still marveling at the display at 70 inches. He was so ahead of his time. That panel was gigantic. 10 years ago, I believe it was about a $6,000 display, which for context is the same price as a 77-inch C1 right now. But back then, what was your panel? For me, again, it was a Pioneer Kiro Elite. Probably those initial Trinitron flat panel, and also those flat panel Philips that were silver with the glass. If you remember the initial HD TVs that first came out. Again, the Panasonic Kiro Elites were my favorite. Loved them back in the day. Always wanted one of those. But as I was at his house the other day, and his Aquos has been on the channel before, but I was able to actually get into YouTube and run a few demos. Unfortunately, I did not have the original remote, so I can't show you the settings, and obviously due to copyright, I can't show you movies or anything like that. So you'll see our typical demos that are on there, but you'll be surprised at how good the display still looks. What's also interesting is when he first purchased it, he was told he could never fit anything larger in that space because even though it hangs, it's kind of above a shelf and it kind of touches the ceiling. And I told him years later to easily fit something larger there, and he didn't believe it. We did measure it. He can easily fit a 77-inch OLED there now. The OLED is still a little bit wider, but the Aquos is actually taller. And I also think it's interesting to look back at those designs where back in the day you had the bottom of these panels really had the badge of that brand so prominent. So, I think the Vizios, when they first came out, they glowed. And you always wanted to look back at your equipment back then and see the name brand, and it was always something that you marveled at. Now we're so minimalist in our designs, we don't want to see anything. We want things to be very, very clean. But in the comments, please let me know what panels you wish you had back then. Tell me when you first got into home theater. What was your first wow experience? Was that with an AV receiver? Was that with Laserdisc? Was that, for me, I go way, way back. So, we'll talk about that in a whole nother video. But in the comments, please let me know what your dream display was, what your dream display is. If you were ever able to obtain it, let me know, and we're going to show Roberto's Sharp Aquos, run some demos, and I think you guys will still be pretty impressed with it. I know I was. All right, guys, here we are looking at this 70-inch monster. Again, this panel is about 10 years old. Sharp Aquos Tri-Luminous. This was the panel I wanted, 1080p, and for context, it is larger than most of the panels of those of you watching right now. It still looks absolutely amazing. And for me back then, this was LCD versus plasma. And where plasma's richness and motion and accuracy, LCD's biggest advantage was pop and vibrancy. And this panel did not disappoint. Now, you've seen these LG Global demos on many of our current panels now, and I think you have to admit it still looks fantastic. Now, this is before there was really edge-lit panels. I believe the Sharp Aquos was a traditional LCD, but you do see in some of these shots, you will see kind of the not flashlighting in the corners, but still a very, very beautiful image. You see it there on the left-hand side. And the reason why I point it out is I'm dead center. But I remember this panel being so vibrant with animation as my family's kids, including my own kids, would be down here watching, you know, the latest Disney or Incredibles or anything like that, and you would see it look so vibrant. But the blacks still look fantastic. The clarity still looks amazing. Now I'm off angle here. Sorry for the shaky cam. I don't have my tripod with me. You can see where the black level still absolutely hangs in there. Where for me, LCDs at the time, other than the edge-lit panels, you know, they did handle blacks pretty well. You see there a little bit in the corners. Now, the aperture on the camera is on its auto preset. It's not lowered to make this panel look better than it is. But those of you that know me know, even though I have OLEDs, I do still have LEDs and LCDs in my heart. It goes back to that first, those days of vibrancy and contrast ratio. And the sharpness that I felt LEDs had over plasma. Plasma to me was a very warm, natural image. You can see there that little bit. I always felt that LEDs were more gamey and more sharp. You see even here the black level does hang in. This is a very challenging scene for any panel. It does still look fantastic. But the color reproduction is spot on. Again, I've seen this demo on the A90J, the A9G, all the LG OLEDs, as well as my own plasmas. Reflection handling is not terrible. The lights are now on. And I'll show you the design shortly. And you see there where that clouding comes in. Now again, these are very challenging demos here. But I do believe it actually hangs in there and looks beautiful, to the point to where even recommending my uncle to upgrade, as he does mostly SDR watching, sports, things of that nature, he's completely happy with it. Now here we are off angle all the way. You see the design a little bit more. And he had the panel hung in between the shelf and the ceiling here. But the colors are spot on. Again, not knowing what preset we're actually in here. Now I have some other content planned with a KS8000, Pioneer Kiro Elites, so we are going to cover a lot more of these older panels. Really beautiful. And even though it is thick by today's standards, it isn't it isn't ugly, you know, the body of it. I'll show you quickly how the badge looks, and we'll measure actually the bezel on the front. So as I measured this panel, I should say here, it is actually taller with the bottom bezel than a brand new A80J 77-inch. The OLED is wider, but it'll actually fit in this spot perfectly. If anything, it'll be more narrow or not as tall. Now these are they're not in HDR, obviously, as the panel doesn't have that capability, but the saturation is beautiful. The blacks look really, really nice. And it showed you back then too that the blooming and the issues we had with a lot of our panels were not obvious during content. I feel like HDR has really brought that, you know, forward. And I can see here as we show the Aquos Quatron 3D Tri-Luminous. See the size of the bezel there. And the thickness of the panel. And then you'll see the Sharp badge right here at the bottom, proudly stated. This cat is killing me, man. And then we'll show the bezel on this side, and you'll actually break out a tape here, and I'll show you the thickness of it. So definitely a few inches thick there. And then we'll break out the measuring tape here. Now it doesn't seem very thick, but if you think about how the panels are, especially down here at the bottom, that's huge if you think about it. All right, guys, I want to say goodbye. I want to say thank you for all you guys do. Thank you to John Hooper, my boy. All the positive feedback. Thank you so much for being part of this community. I hope you enjoy these older videos. We will unbox that HDVD player, but I want this channel to be more than just new technology. I want it to cover just about everything. But I really appreciate you. I appreciate your friendship and have such genuine love for you guys. Thank you as always. Take care.